As video game fans, we know that just occasionally we must prepare ourselves emotionally for the death of a beloved character. After all, not everyone gets to have a happy ending, and without the threat of death, there often wouldn't be much in the way of stakes. Oftentimes, we'll see characters' deaths coming a mile off, and so when the time finally does come for them to bite the big one, we're not all that surprised. Occasionally, though, a much-loved character will be killed off without warning, leaving us shocked, angry, and depressed in equal measure. For today's list, we're taking a look at the gut-wrenching video game deaths that we really didn't see coming. Fair warning, we'll be talking pivotal plot points here, so a massive spoiler warning is in effect for all of the games listed on screen right now. You got all of those? Okay, let's get on with it, shall we? Get your hankies ready. I'm Peter from TripleJump, and here are 10 heartbreaking video game deaths that came out of nowhere. Number 10. Cole Phelps, LA Noire. Now here at Team TripleJump, we often make fun of Cole Phelps for being an all-round shouty douche canoe, but that doesn't mean we didn't grow somewhat fond of him in the 30+ hours it took us to complete LA Noire. He may be a douche canoe, but he's our douche canoe. It's for that reason then that we were completely blindsided when he ended up just drowning in a sewer. Players spend most of LA Noire's runtime with Phelps, assisting the detective on cases that range from car theft to murder. Ultimately, Phelps and his former comrade Kelso uncover a major conspiracy relating to a suburban redevelopment fund initiative which can be linked to several of Los Angeles' most prominent citizens. This all comes to a head when Phelps' lover, Elsa, is kidnapped by Hogaboom, a patient of a psychiatrist connected to the SRF scam. Phelps and Kelso follow Hogaboom and Elsa into the Los Angeles River tunnels, where Hogaboom is shot dead. Sadly, although Kelso and Elsa are then able to escape before heavy rain, no, not that one, floods the tunnels, Phelps isn't quite so lucky, and in a shocking twist, he's swept away by the water and just straight up drowns. Did not see that coming, I have to say. Number 9. Sean, Red Dead Redemption 2. If Rockstar's series of rootin', tootin', third-person shooting action-adventure titles is to be believed, then life in the Old West was pretty rough. Even if you've managed to avoid all the outlaws and bandits, then it's likely you'd still have died young from something like TB. Still, knowing the dangers of living in the American frontier didn't prepare Red Dead Redemption 2 players for the death of beloved companion Sean, no, not that one, whose demise really did come out of absolutely nowhere. On the understanding that a security job is waiting for them, Arthur, Bill, Mika, and Sean take a walk down Rhodes' main street to meet the Greys. Something isn't right though, and Arthur stops the gang's stroll owing to a bad feeling he has. It turns out he was right to be suspicious, as the gang is ambushed and Sean immediately takes a bullet to the head. The chipper Irishman's sudden death came as a massive shock to players, who probably assumed he'd be safe from harm for the remainder of the game after they'd spent so much time trying to rescue him in the second chapter. Rest easy, dear Sean. You deserved much, much better. Number 8. Jackie Wells, Cyberpunk 2077. If you were one of the countless gamers that watched every Cyberpunk 2077 trailer with the excited glee of a small child on Christmas morning, then Jackie Wells' death probably didn't come as that much of a shock. However, to those who hadn't seen any of the promotional footage, it really did come right out of left field. Prior to the release of Cyberpunk 2077, many players believed that Wells would play a major role in the game, as he was featured heavily in the pre-release gameplay footage. As it turned out though, he didn't even end up making it out of the prologue. The opening of Cyberpunk 2077 varies depending on which life path the player chooses for their character V, but no matter whether they go for Nomad, Corpo, or Street Kid, ultimately things play out just the same for Jackie. Hired by local fixer Dexter DeShawn, V and Wells set out on a mission to steal a biochip from the Arasaka Corporation. Things quickly go south though when they witness a murder, and although the duo does escape, Wells is fatally wounded. Most players went into Cyberpunk 2077 with a lot of expectations, but they probably didn't expect to see a character they'd assumed to be a major part of the story killed within the first couple of hours. Number 7. Caroline, Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus. By this point, it's hard to keep track of the number of times I've had a breakdown over the death of a beloved video game character, though when it came to Caroline from Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus, I wasn't the only one losing my head. Sorry, that's inappropriate. Caroline first appeared in 2009's Wolfenstein as the leader of the Kreisau Circle, a resistance network fighting to overthrow the Nazi regime. She also appeared in the series' soft reboot, Wolfenstein: The New Order, before finally meeting her end in The New Colossus. Whilst protagonist BJ Blazkowicz is recovering aboard a U-boat from injuries sustained in The New Order, both Caroline and either Fergus or Wyatt, depending on who the player has chosen to survive, are captured by Irene Engel and her Nazi troops. In order to save as many lives as possible, Blazkowicz devises a plan to get himself captured and is brought aboard Engel's airship. Sadly, his injuries have left him weak, and he's powerless to act as Engel taunts him and decapitates Caroline. The scene is absolutely brutal, and even as the axe was being swung, players were probably telling themselves that something would happen to save such a heroic character, but alas, it wasn't meant to be. Number 6. Lugo, Spec Ops: The Line. Spec Ops: The Line is a game that's filled to the brim with upsetting moments, whether you're unknowingly unleashing white phosphorus on a group of civilians, or simply coming to the realization that it was Walker responsible for the atrocities all along, not Conrad. Spec Ops: The Line is set in a sandstorm-ravaged Dubai and focuses on the recon efforts of protagonist Captain Martin Walker and his comrades Adams and Lugo. Wayward Sand is the least of their worries though, as the battalion sent in before them have royally messed up their rescue mission, resulting in a coup d'etat and civilian unrest. Following a helicopter crash, Lugo goes missing, and in a city full of people who hate US soldiers, that's not good. Not to worry though, because he manages to make contact over the radio, so Walker and Adams will definitely be able to get there in time to save him, right? Except, no. By the time Walker and Adams are able to reach Lugo's location, he's being hanged by a mob of civilians, and the pair are unable to revive him. By this point in the game, Spec Ops: The Line has already given us players an emotional battering, and Lugo's unexpected death just felt like the game kicking us when we were already down. Number 5. Dom, Gears of War 3. We've seen some truly tragic character backstories in our time here at Team TripleJump, but few of them hold a candle to Dominic Dom Santiago from the Gears of War series. Honestly, if that man had gone on the X Factor, he'd have been a shoo-in for that record deal, I tell you. On Emergence Day, i.e. the day when the Locust Horde first launched their assault, Dom lost both of his children, which then caused his wife to go into a deep depression and later go missing. By the time Dom was able to find her, she'd been tortured to the point where she was no longer responsive, and the poor guy was left with no choice but to euthanize her. Talk about a rough old time. Fast forward to the events of Gears of War 3, and Delta Squad, of which Dom is a member, find themselves desperately in need of submarine fuel. They venture into a nearby town, but it isn't long before they're overrun with both Locust and Lambent, a new foe that threatens humanity. Rather than allowing his companions to fall though, Dom jumps into a tanker and causes an explosion, saving his friends by sacrificing himself. What a hero. Number 4. Booker DeWitt, BioShock Infinite. We've said it before and we'll say it again. BioShock Infinite is one convoluted game. Don't get us wrong, it's a brilliant game, but trying to understand the plot has us feeling like, well, Charlie trying to unravel the Pepe Sylvia conspiracy. Put simply, the Booker and Elizabeth we see in the game are not the only ones. In fact, there are infinite numbers of them in alternate realities, as well as infinite cities created by a man with visions of founding a utopia, which all fall due to corruption. There's always a lighthouse, there's always a man, there's always a city. To further complicate matters, Booker is also antagonist Comstock, and Elizabeth is also Booker's daughter, Anna, depending on whether Booker accepts his baptism or not. Everyone with me so far? No? Well, I'm not surprised. Regardless of whether players were truly able to wrap their heads around BioShock Infinite's impossible narrative, they'd have still become quite attached to Booker over the course of the game. Therefore, it's somewhat devastating when it turns out that the only way to end the cycle for him is to be drowned. And drowned he is. Sure, it prevents the existence of Comstock, but at a massive emotional cost to the player. Number 3. Jin's Horse, Ghost of Tsushima. Considering that Ghost of Tsushima is a game about a samurai who must fight to protect the people of a Japanese island from Mongol invaders, players probably went into the game expecting at least a handful of deaths. As is often the case though, it wasn't the human loss of life that hit many players the hardest, but rather the demise of their faithful animal pal. During the prologue, players are offered the opportunity to choose a horse for protagonist Jin Sakai. Over the course of the game, the horse not only provides Jin with transport, but also serves as his companion, which makes it all the more heartrending when it falls unexpectedly at the beginning of Act 3. After killing Ryuzo whilst trying to track down Khan at the end of Act 2, Jin is imprisoned by his uncle, Lord Shimura, for violating the samurai code. However, aided by Kenji, he's able to find his horse and flee north to find Yuna. Though Jin makes it out of the castle unscathed, players are shocked to see his horse peppered with arrows. And although he carries Jin as far as he can, he ultimately succumbs to his injuries, in a scene made all the more heartbreaking by Jin's lamentations that he was unable to protect his loyal stallion. It's like the never-ending story all over again. I can't cope with this. Number 2. Aerith Gainsborough, Final Fantasy VII. We've talked about the shocking and untimely death of Aerith Gainsborough, or Aerith Gainsborough if you want to get the other pronunciation about this, in previous lists, but honestly it was so heartbreaking that we feel it bears repeating. It may have been over a quarter of a century since it first happened, but honestly, we're still not over it. When we first meet her in Final Fantasy VII, Aerith is a simple flower merchant, but after meeting protagonist Cloud Strife, she quickly becomes involved with the eco-terrorist organisation Avalanche, in all caps, and joins them as they pursue the megalomaniacal Sephiroth. As the game progresses, players learn that Aerith is not just some lass that peddles floral arrangements for a living, but is in fact one of the Cetra. This means she has the potential to reveal the Promised Land, a place filled with lifestream energy which Shinra are looking to exploit, and Sephiroth is aiming to absorb in order to become godlike. After finding that Cloud can be manipulated by Sephiroth, Aerith departs to an abandoned Cetra city to take him on by herself. As she's praying, Sephiroth attempts to have Cloud kill her, and when he's unsuccessful, he jumps down from the rafters and murders her himself, devastating Aerith's friends and the player in the process. What an absolute toe rag. And number 1, Joel, The Last of Us Part 2. When The Last of Us Part 2 was first announced back in 2016, we fans immediately got to speculating about what was likely to have happened to Joel and Ellie in the years since the events of the first game. Whatever we might have been expecting from the sequel though, it certainly wasn't seeing Joel beaten to death with a golf club within the first 2 hours of its runtime. The Last of Us Part 2 picks up Joel and Ellie's story 4 years after the, let's call it the hospital incident, by which point Ellie has found out exactly what happened. And although she and Joel are still living in the same community, their relationship has become strained. Whilst out on patrol, Joel and Tommy save a woman named Abby from a horde of infected, but upon returning to her outpost, they discover she and her friends are former Fireflies, and that Abby's father was the surgeon murdered by Joel. After finding out that Joel and Tommy haven't returned to their post, Ellie, her girlfriend Dinah, and Dinah's ex-boyfriend Jesse set out to find the brothers, but by the time Ellie is able to reach the lodge, it's already too late, and she's forced to look on as Abby brutally murders Joel. I'm not saying I didn't expect Joel to die in this game, but the timing and manner of his execution here is something I don't think I'll ever quite recover from.